On the day of our college graduation, my parents held up their cameras, taking photo after photo of my boyfriend and my best friend. Through the lens, Ethan smiled and kissed Chloe on the cheek. He even dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring to fake a proposal. My parents stood by, watching with warm, indulgent smiles. Yet, I was their actual daughter. And Ethan was the guy I had been dating for 4 years. Dressed in my graduation gown, I stood alone in the corner. I waited for a long time, but my mom never once called my name. Once Chloe finished her photo shoot, she sighed and complained about not finding a good job yet. Naturally, Ethan forgot all about me, immediately leaning down to comfort her. Come work at my company. Be my personal assistant. What do you say? My brother, Marcus, walked over with a cold bottle of water. He only handed it to Chloe, then wrapped a possessive arm around her shoulders, giving Ethan a sharp glare. Chloe, come to my company instead. Be my personal assistant. 2 men, fighting over my best friend. My parents laughed, saying we were all just one big family anyway. I stood to the side, my fingers tightening into fists. It felt as though Chloe was their real daughter, and Ethan was her boyfriend. Since that was the case, I would sign the job contract for the place furthest away from home, and never come back. An email notification popped up on my phone. It was from the company Chloe had interviewed with. They rejected her. Chloe's eyes welled with tears instantly. Am I really that useless? I can't even get a basic job. My mom immediately pulled her into a comforting hug. What nonsense are you talking about? Maybe Natalie is useless enough to not find a job, but not you. You've been perfect in everything since you were a kid, Chloe. How could you not find a job? After saying that, she glanced back at me. That company just lacks vision. Don't worry, sweetie, we'll take our time finding a better one. I stood there, having done absolutely nothing, yet once again being used as the foil to prove Chloe's superiority. Growing up, I had doubted countless times whether I was the one who was adopted, and if Chloe was their biological child. But unfortunately, the DNA test I secretly took showed no issues. Later, I thought it was because of my personality. Maybe I wasn't smart or charming enough. So, I worked myself to the bone to prove my worth. Yet by the time I finally achieved things that should have made them proud, I realized their favoritism toward Chloe had already become a deep-rooted habit. Just like now, they were used to ignoring me. They knew I'd always find my own way home anyway. I stood there, watching Ethan whisper sweet nothings to comfort Chloe. Meanwhile, my dad was on the phone, calling the HR manager of Aegis Group on the spot. After hanging up, he made a confident promise. I've sorted it out for you. Your first job is crucial. You can't just settle. A major corporation like Aegis is the bare minimum. There was always a safety net beneath Chloe's feet. The moment she slipped, everyone rushed to catch her. During our freshman year, she failed a core course. My mom pulled strings to find a senior tutor, paying $300 per session and booking 20 sessions in advance. That same semester, I scored a 95 on my final exam. Full of anticipation, I showed my grade to my mom, hoping for a single word of praise. But all I got was criticism. I thought you said you worked hard? Why did you lose 5 points? After that, I stopped sending my grades home. During our junior year, I had a sudden bout of acute gastritis. The pain was so intense I collapsed at the entrance of the lab building, unable to stand. I called Ethan, begging him for the first time to take me to the hospital. But the other end of the line was quiet for a moment. Chloe has a big presentation tomorrow. She's really nervous right now and needs me to help her practice. Natalie, you've always been independent. You can call an Uber yourself, right? That day, the Uber driver saw how pale I was and personally helped me walk into the ER. A complete stranger knew I needed a hand. Yet Ethan thought I was perfectly fine on my own. Maybe it was because I had been too sensible for too long. When you never complain, people assume you don't feel pain. It was only much later that my mom casually asked about my job hunt. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could answer, my dad waved his hand dismissively. With her major, what kind of good job can she get? Just find some random desk job and call it a day. Marcus glanced at me, frowning. Yeah, just get a job. Don't think you're going to live rent-free at home after graduation. Ethan even chimed in. If you really can't find anything, I can ask if our company's front desk is hiring. He said it so naturally, as if he was genuinely doing me a favor. I looked down and unlocked my phone, opening the acceptance email. The Cairo Institute of Deep Space Materials. Excellent benefits, highly prestigious, but located over 5,000 miles away. For the past 7 days, I hadn't confirmed the offer. I was waiting for my mom to ask me where I wanted to stay, waiting for my dad to make a call for me too, or waiting for Ethan to remember our promise to stay in the same city after graduation. But with only 6 hours left on the confirmation countdown, not a single person asked. I tapped confirm. A message popped up on the screen. Welcome to the Cairo Institute of Deep Space Materials, Natalie Sinclair. At that moment, the first sincere welcome I received came from 5,000 miles away. The next morning, my mom dragged us all to the mall. She said since Chloe was joining a big company, she needed a brand new wardrobe. A $6,000 designer suit, a $15,000 work bag, and $5,000 high heels. Every time Chloe looked at a price tag in hesitation, my mom would smile and tell her not to worry about the cost. You're going to be working at a top firm. You need to look the part. My dad happily handed over his credit card at the register. Marcus, his hands full of shopping bags, asked Chloe if she wanted some designer perfume too. Ethan knelt down, gently feeling the back of Chloe's new heels. The leather here is a bit stiff. Let's try another pair. I don't want you getting blisters on your first day. I stood a few paces away, watching his gentle profile. During our 4 years of college, I had walked miles in ill-fitting shoes just to keep him company. When my heels bled, he only laughed and said I was being dramatic. It turned out he knew shoes could hurt. It was just that when those shoes were on my feet, it wasn't worth his concern. Passing by a luggage store, I stopped. My suitcase was 10 years old, and the corners were cracked. I had wrapped layers of duct tape around it, and the wheels were completely uneven. I picked the cheapest one in the store, $129. Instead of taking it straight to the counter, I walked over to my dad. Can I get this? Perhaps, even now, I still held on to a stupid shred of hope. They had just spent over $30,000 buying luxury clothes, shoes, and bags for Chloe. A $100 suitcase shouldn't be too much to ask for, right? Maybe I just wanted to prove that I still held some tiny fraction of a place in their hearts. But my dad only frowned. Don't we have suitcases at home? That one is 10 years old, Dad. It's broken. Just because it's broken doesn't mean it's unusable. Do you think your parents' hard-earned money is for you to throw away like this? My mom walked over, scoffing. Chloe got a prestigious job, so of course she needs nice things. She glanced at the suitcase in my hand, her tone filled with annoyance. What kind of job are you going to get that warrants a fancy suitcase like this? You'll probably end up as a receptionist somewhere. Nobody cares what bag you bring. Just make do with the old one. Marcus chuckled from the side. She's just jealous. She saw Chloe buying things, so now she wants to compete. My hand froze on the handle. Slowly, I put the suitcase back. Chloe stood outside the store, her $15,000 bag on her shoulder, surrounded by shopping bags. Natalie, aren't you buying anything? No. I looked down at my worn-out canvas tote bag. It wasn't that the family was broke. And it wasn't that appearance didn't matter. It was just that whenever it came to me, everything became unnecessary and wasteful. That evening, my mom booked a private room at a nice restaurant to celebrate our graduation. A massive cake sat in the center of the table. The moment I walked in, the icing caught my eye. Congratulations on graduation, Chloe. Wishing you a brilliant future. Chloe looked slightly embarrassed. Helen, did you forget to write Natalie's name? My mom didn't even look up. She doesn't like cake anyway. It doesn't matter. Actually, I loved cake. She had just never bought one for me. During dinner, my dad handed a recommendation letter to Chloe. I've already spoken to my contact. You can report to Aegis Group next week. The office is close to home, and the pay is great. Chloe's eyes turned red. You guys are too good to me. I don't know how to repay you. My mom squeezed her hand. Oh, sweetie, don't talk about repaying us. We already think of you as our own daughter. Watching them hold hands, I suddenly felt like an intruder sitting at the wrong table. The warm, family scene was so blindingly bright that my presence felt like a stain on their perfect picture. When the bill came, my mom paid for Chloe's share. But a second later, a Snapchat split bill request of $136.50 popped up on my phone. Sent by my mom. Only I was asked to pay. Natalie, you've graduated now. You can't keep relying on your parents' money. From now on, you'll need to pay your share for dinners, rent for your room, and utilities. I stared at the split bill request down to the cents. I didn't say a word. I just quietly clicked pay. When we got home, my mom stopped me just as I was about to go to my room. Pack up your things. Chloe is moving in tomorrow. She starts at Aegis next week. Her family's place is too far from the office, so she'll be living with us. I followed her gaze. In the hallway sat brand new bedding and a vanity table that had just been delivered. All in Chloe's favorite baby pink. Where is she staying? Your room, of course. We don't have any other spare rooms. I froze. Then where do I sleep? My mom paused, pointing toward the storage closet near the entrance. Clean out the storage room. A folding bed can fit in there. Chloe is our guest, so you'll just have to deal with it. The storage room was piled high with old furniture. The window was half blocked by a cabinet, and there was mold on the walls. When we were kids and Chloe stayed over, I used to give up my bed and sleep there too. Back then, my mom would stroke my hair and say, "Our Natalie is the most sensible girl." I had always thought being sensible would earn me a little bit of her love. Only later did I realize that the reward for being sensible was being expected to give up everything forever. No, I won't do it. It was the first time I had ever said no. My mom's face darkened instantly. Chloe is going to be busy with her new job. She needs proper rest. You don't even have a job lined up. What difference does it make where you sleep? I whispered. It's my room. My mom laughed as if she'd heard a joke. Your room? Everything in this house was given to you by us. What's wrong with you giving up a room for a bit? I stared at her and suddenly asked, what if the job I got is better than Chloe's? My mom frowned. Natalie, it's one thing to have no talent, but don't lie just because you're jealous. I had wanted to tell her that I was accepted by the Cairo Institute, but the words died in my throat. My dad finally snapped in irritation. If you don't want to sleep in the storage room, then pack your bags and get out. Nobody is stopping you. I looked at them and nodded. Okay. They thought I was just throwing a tantrum. My mom didn't even try to stop me. She only warned me to clear my things out completely, so I wouldn't delay Chloe's move-in tomorrow. I found a cheap hostel nearby. A 6-bed dorm, top bunk, $30 a night. Every time the person next to me tossed and turned, the entire metal frame shook. But the moment I lay down, I felt more at peace than I ever had at home. At least this bed was truly mine, paid for with my own money. The next day, I went back to pack the rest of my things. When I opened my jewelry box, I realized the sapphire cross necklace left by my grandma was gone. Grandma Eleanor was the only person in that family who had ever truly loved me. When I had a high fever as a kid, my mom was away at Chloe's dance recital. It was Grandma who carried me to the hospital on her back. She told me, our Natalie isn't fearless. She's just too scared to cry because there's no one to comfort her. After Grandma passed away, that cross necklace became my only comfort. I marched into the living room, clutching the empty box. Mom, where is my necklace? My mom paused her hands while stripping the bedsheets. It's just an old cross. How should I know where you put it? The moment she finished speaking, a photo popped up in the family Snapchat group. My dad had set up a dinner with his friends to introduce Chloe to the executives of Aegis Group. In the photo, Chloe was wearing the new designer dress we bought yesterday, and around her neck was my sapphire cross necklace. I shoved the photo in front of my mom's face. Seeing she couldn't lie her way out, she doubled down, completely shameless. Chloe was meeting executives today. Her neck looked too bare, so I gave it to her. You never wear it anyway. Why let it gather dust? That was Grandma's. My mom's expression went cold. I'm your mother. Do I need your permission to take something from this house? Besides, your grandma adored Chloe too when she was alive. If she knew you were throwing a fit over a piece of jewelry, she'd think you were incredibly petty. Grandma wouldn't. Tears fell without warning, and my voice began to tremble. Grandma was the only person in this family who never forced me to give up my things to Chloe. I turned to head to the restaurant, but my mom blocked the door immediately. The executives are still there. If you go now, are you trying to ruin Chloe's career? While we were arguing, the front door swung open. Chloe was back. She touched the sapphire cross on her chest. Natalie, are you looking for this? She unclasped the chain and held it out in her palm. I didn't know this was from your grandma. Helen told me it was a graduation gift. I walked over and reached out my hand. Give it back. I was still 2 paces away from her when she suddenly let go. The necklace crashed heavily onto the tiled floor. The blue sapphire in the center of the cross shattered into pieces. Chloe took a step back, tears streaming down her face first. I'm so sorry you rushed at me so fast I got scared. I knelt down, gathering the shattered pieces into my palm. The sharp edges of the broken metal cut into my finger, blood seeping into the cracks. On my 18th birthday, Grandma Eleanor had placed this necklace around my neck. Her hands had been weak, taking several attempts to secure the clasp. Our Natalie always gives in to everyone else. When Grandma is gone, make sure you keep the things you love. Don't let yourself suffer anymore. I had hugged her back then, giggling and saying that as long as I had her, I'd never suffer. But then Grandma passed away. And in this house, there was no longer anyone who saw me as a girl who felt pain, got sad, or deserved to be loved. I couldn't even protect the last thing she left me. The only love I had left was taken by them to please Chloe, only to be smashed to pieces right in front of my eyes. Natalie, I really didn't mean to. Chloe covered her face and sobbed. My mom immediately shielded her in her arms. Don't cry, sweetie. It's not your fault. She glared at me. If she hadn't rushed at you like a maniac, why would your hands shake? But I hadn't even touched Chloe. Marcus sighed in annoyance. Just take it to a jeweler and get it fixed. It's not like it's worth that much anyway. Ethan pulled out a tissue, gently wiping the tears from Chloe's face. Nobody noticed my hand was bleeding. Or maybe they did. It was just that compared to Chloe's tears, it didn't matter. I tightly clenched my fist around the broken cross. In the past, whenever I was wronged, I would scream and explain myself. I used to believe that if I just explained clearly, they would understand. But at this moment, I didn't even have the energy to speak. I slipped the broken necklace into my pocket and walked out. My mom screamed after me. If you walk out that door, don't you dare come back. You're an adult and you still have such an attitude. Who would ever put up with you? I didn't look back. She didn't know that I had no intention of ever returning. I went back to the hostel. My flight to the Cairo Institute was the day after tomorrow. I packed my remaining clothes. At 1 in the morning, a message from Ethan came through. Chloe cried the entire night. Are you happy now? I stared at the screen for a long time. I wanted to explain, but halfway through typing, I deleted everything. He didn't care. Just like he never cared why I left. Chloe's tears required everyone to comfort her all night. My pain only earned me a complaint about my bad attitude. I blocked every single one of them. Then, I dragged my broken suitcase to the train station to head to the airport. At the security check, the wheel of my suitcase got stuck. A kind older woman helped me lift it. Traveling alone, dear? No family to send you off. I smiled, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. They have someone more important to take care of. As the train pulled away from the platform, I looked at the broken necklace in my hand and finally let my tears fall in the silence of the cabin. I wasn't crying because I missed them. I was crying for my younger self. The girl who had stupidly believed that if she was just a little more sensible, someone would finally love her back. Before turning off my phone, I saw a few incoming texts. They were still demanding that I be sensible and come back to apologize to Chloe. But they didn't know. The Natalie Sinclair who was always sensible, who always waited for their approval, was gone. And she was never coming back. The heat of Cairo was different from the damp, heavy summers of New York. It was a dry, ancient warmth that smelled of sand, stone, and the distant, slow-moving waters of the Nile. I stood in the lobby of the Cairo Institute of Deep Space Materials, my old, cracked suitcase resting against my leg. The tape around the corners had begun to peel under the desert heat, but the wheels had made it through the terminal. Above me, the vaulted ceiling of the research center was made of polished gray granite, inscribed with the names of the international scientists who had built the facility. There were no pink decorations here. No matching vanitables. The air smelled of clean ozone, chemical reagents, and the quiet, serious hum of the high-power laboratories down the hall. Natalie Sinclair? I turned. A tall man in a crisp linen shirt and a white laboratory coat was walking toward me. He had a kind, weathered face, his gray hair cropped short, his dark eyes sparkling with a quiet, professional curiosity. Yes, Dr. Vance, I said, my voice steady as I reached out to shake his hand. His palm was dry and warm, his grip firm. We've been waiting for you, Dr. Vance said, a small, genuine smile appearing on his face. The selection committee was highly impressed by your graduation thesis on titanium carbon alloys. To find someone your age who can manage the dynamic stress testing of aerospace structures without a single error is rare. He looked at my faded canvas bag, then at the tape on my suitcase, but his eyes didn't carry the cold, critical judgment I had grown up with. He only nodded toward the elevator. The institute has arranged a private apartment for you in the faculty residential block, he said. It has a balcony overlooking the valley. The rent is fully covered by your fellowship, and your research stipend has already been deposited into your local account. I looked at the silver key card he placed in my palm. It was clean, cold, and entirely mine. Thank you, Dr. Vance, I whispered. Get some rest, Natalie, he said, gently clapping his hand on my shoulder. Your first lab rotation begins on Monday. We have a lot of work to do. As the elevator carried me up to the residential floor, I walked out onto the balcony of my new apartment. The sun was beginning to set over the horizon, casting a long, golden light across the distant, silent shapes of the pyramids. I pulled the broken sapphire cross from my pocket and laid the fragments on the small wooden table. Under the warm Egyptian sun, the blue stone didn't look like a ruined mess anymore. It looked like a series of small, bright stars, resting quietly on the wood. I took a deep breath, the dry air filling my lungs, and for the first time in 10 years, my chest didn't feel tight. I was 5,000 miles away, and no one here was going to ask me to give up. My room, the Sinclair mansion, had never been so quiet. In the past, even when Natalie was locked in her room studying, the house had a subtle, rhythmic order. The laundry was always folded neatly in the baskets, the dishes were washed and stacked before my mom even reached the kitchen, and the small herb garden on the balcony was always watered. But now the house felt heavy, smelling of damp paint and the sticky chemical scent of fresh lacquer from Chloe's new pink vanity. Chloe, sweetie, Helen said, her voice slightly tired as she stood in the doorway of Natalie's old room. Are you almost ready? The delivery men are waiting to bring up the mattress. I'm almost done, Helen. Chloe's voice carried from the closet, high and slightly whiny. But there's no room for my winter coats. Natalie left so much junk in here. Helen walked into the room, her brow furrowing. Junk? She was supposed to clear her things out completely. She opened the built-in closet. The hangers were empty. Not a single coat, shirt, or scarf remained. On the top shelf, where Natalie had kept her books and her high school awards, there was only a thin layer of dust. The desk drawer was empty, save for a single dried blue hydrangea flower she had kept from Grandma Eleanor's funeral. Natalie hadn't left a single sock. She hadn't left a hair tie. She had completely erased herself from the room, leaving the space looking as sterile and cold as a hotel suite. Where did she put her things? Helen murmured, a strange cold pressure rising behind her ears. Probably in the storage room, Marcus said, walking into the hallway with a glass of water. You know how she is. She's probably just hiding in there, waiting for us to ask her to come out for dinner. She's been throwing this silent treatment for 3 days now. I'll go check, Helen said, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood as she walked toward the entrance. She pushed the door to the storage room open. The room was exactly as it had been last week, piled high with old, dusty chairs, a broken bicycle, and cardboard boxes of old tax records. There was no folding bed. There was no suitcase. Natalie wasn't there. Marcus, Helen called out, her voice rising slightly. Is Natalie at the library? Did she go to Ethan's house? I don't know, Mom, Marcus said, scrolling through his phone. I tried to Snapchat her yesterday to ask where she put my car keys, but her profile didn't show up. I think she deleted her account. Helen's hand, holding the doorknob of the storage room, slowly tightened. She pulled out her phone and dialed Natalie's number. We're sorry. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again. Helen froze. She disconnected her phone? What are you shouting about? Robert, my dad, asked as he walked into the hallway, his newspaper in hand. Did Natalie finally apologize to Chloe? She's not in the storage room, Robert, Helen said, her voice trembling slightly. And her phone is disconnected. Her closet is completely empty. Robert frowned, set his paper down, and let out an irritated huff. She's just playing games. She's 22 years old and still throwing tantrums like a child. Let her stay at her friend's house for a few days. Once her savings run out, she'll come crawling back to beg for her rent money. But Robert, her suitcase was broken, Helen said, a sudden, dark memory of the $100 suitcase from the mall rising in her mind. She had no money. She has her graduation stipend from the university, Marcus said, though his face had gone slightly pale. But she blocked me on every app, Mom. Even my messages won't go through. Just then the front door clicked open. Ethan walked in, holding a small paper bag from the local pharmacy. He looked tired, his eyes red-rimmed, his hair slightly disheveled. Ethan, Helen said, running toward him. Did Natalie come to your house? Is she staying with your mom? Ethan looked at her, his expression flat, almost hollow. No, he said. I went to her university today to ask her counselor if she had taken the graduation certificate. Her counselor? She looked at me like I was insane. He looked at Robert, his voice dropping to a dry, raspy whisper. She accepted the fellowship at the Cairo Institute of Deep Space Materials. Helen. She signed the contract 3 weeks ago. She boarded a flight to Egypt on Sunday morning. The hallway fell into an absolute, ringing silence. The brand new pink bedding, still wrapped in its plastic casing on the floor, looked grotesque under the bright hallway lights. Egypt. Helen whispered, her knees suddenly going weak as she grabbed the banister to keep from falling. But that's 5,000 miles away. She's not coming back, Helen, Ethan said, his voice cracking as he looked at his hand, where the tissue he had used to wipe Chloe's tears was still crumpled. She blocked all of us. She's gone. The offices of the Aegis Group's materials division were spacious, quiet, and smelled of expensive carpet and new leather. Chloe sat at her mahogany desk, her $15,000 designer bag resting on the corner, her fingers flying across her keyboard. She was wearing her new $6,000 suit, her hair styled in a perfect, elegant bob. Chloe, the senior materials director, a stern-faced man named Dr. Ross, said, entering her office with a thick blue folder. The preliminary safety analysis for the titanium carbon alloys on the new aerospace contract. Did you write this? Chloe stood up, her face flushing with pride, a sweet, modest smile appearing on her lips. Yes, Dr. Ross. I spent several nights reviewing the stress test logs. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect before we submitted it to the board. Perfect. Dr. Ross's voice was very quiet, but it made her smile freeze. He opened the folder and set a single, red-lined page on her desk. This formula on page 14, Dr. Ross said, pointing to a complex string of calculations. The stress-to-yield ratio is calculated using a static model. But the materials we are using are dynamic. If we build the fuselage using these coordinates, the structure will fracture under thermal expansion within 40 hours of flight. Chloe's heart gave a sudden, violent throb of panic. I checked the logs. Dr. Ross. The database said. The database was compiled 3 years ago, Chloe, Dr. Ross said, his eyes cold and sharp. Your father's recommendation letter said you had a genius understanding of aerospace structures. But this analysis is nothing but a direct, word-for-word plagiarism of a senior thesis from Linwood University. He turned the page, revealing a scanned copy of Natalie's graduation thesis. The original research was done by Natalie Sinclair, Dr. Ross said, his tone turning into an icy sneer. And she used a dynamic algorithm she wrote herself, an algorithm she did not include in the public database. You copied her static templates, Chloe, without understanding a single variable of the underlying math. No, that's not true, Chloe cried, her hands trembling as she grabbed the edge of her desk. Natalie and I worked on that project together. We were partners. She gave me those files. She didn't give them to you, Chloe, Dr. Ross said, closing the folder with a sharp, heavy thud. We contacted Linwood University this morning. The registry confirmed that Natalie Sinclair was the sole author of the paper, and she was awarded the university's gold medal for research last month. He looked at her new designer suit, her luxury bag, and her expensive shoes, his expression filled with a deep, silent disgust. The Aegis Group does not employ frauds, Chloe. Your father's contact cannot save you from an academic espionage charge. You are terminated. Effective immediately. Dr. Ross, please, Chloe screamed, her tears finally flowing down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I can fix it. I can call Natalie. She'll give me the algorithm. Natalie Sinclair is currently the lead associate at the Cairo Institute of Deep Space Materials, Dr. Ross said, his voice flat. She is under a diplomatic research protection order from the International Space Commission. Do you really think she is going to answer a call from a disgraced junior clerk? He turned on his heel and walked out, leaving her standing alone in the quiet, elegant office, her $6,000 suit looking like nothing more than a ridiculous costume. The living room of the Sinclair mansion was filled with the smell of stale coffee and tension. My dad, Robert, sat at the dining table, his face pale, his hands trembling as he looked at a series of legal letters from the Aegis Group. Beside him, my mom, Helen, was sobbing, her head resting on her arms, while Marcus paced the floor, his face dark with anger. They're suing us, Robert whispered, his voice dry. They're claiming corporate fraud. They're demanding the return of the $30,000 signing bonus we secured for Chloe, and they've filed a formal complaint with the university. But Robert, we didn't know, Helen cried, looking up, her eyes red and swollen. Chloe, she said she was perfect. She said she was the one who did all the work while Natalie was just helping her. She lied, Helen. Marcus roared, turning to face his mother. She lied to all of us. I went to her room yesterday to ask her about the thesis files. She didn't even know how to open the MATLAB compiler. She didn't know what a stress strain curve was. He threw a folder onto the table. Natalie did all of it. For 4 years, every paper Chloe submitted, every project she won, Natalie wrote the code. And we called her useless. We told her she would end up as a receptionist. Where is she? Robert asked, his voice shaking. We need to contact her. We need her to sign the release for the dynamic algorithm. If she doesn't, the Aegis lawsuit will bankrupt our company. I tried to contact her, Dad, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a flat, lifeless whisper. I called the Cairo Institute's general office. The receptionist said. She said Miss Sinclair does not accept calls from the United States. She's under a high security clearance. What about Ethan? Helen asked, her hand clutching her chest. He's her boyfriend. He's been dating her for 4 years. She must still love him. If Ethan calls her. I tried, Ethan said, entering the living room from the balcony. He looked like a ghost. His eyes were hollow, his clothes rumpled, his hand holding his phone. I sent her 100 emails, Helen, Ethan said, his voice cracking. I told her I realized Chloe was a mistake. I told her I'd buy her a new suitcase, that I'd fly to Cairo to bring her home. But she never answered. He looked at Robert, a small, bitter laugh escaping his throat. I found a copy of her flight itinerary in her old desk drawer. She booked the ticket using the money she earned from her private translation job, a job she worked until 3 in the morning every night while I was helping Chloe practice her presentations. He shook his head, looking away. She had been planning to leave for 6 months, Robert. She was just waiting for us to give her a single reason to stay. Helen sank back into her chair, her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she let out a loud, ragged sob of pure, unadulterated regret. I gave her necklace away, she wept. I let Chloe smash her grandma's necklace. Oh God, Natalie. I'm sorry. The family Snapchat group, which had once been filled with photos of Chloe's new clothes and her grand dinners, was silent. The pink bedroom, still decorated with Chloe's baby pink vanity, looked like a tomb. A monument to a daughter who had given up everything, only to realize that her family's love was a counterfeit. 2 years later, the Cairo International Convention Center was a shimmering sea of blue lights, glass walls, and the quiet hum of high-end aerospace machinery. The World Deep Space Materials Summit was the most prestigious event of the year, attended by thousands of top scientists, corporate executives, and military representatives from around the world. The Aegis Group, on the verge of bankruptcy after their failed contracts in the U.S., had sent their final delegation, Marcus, Ethan, and Chloe, to try and secure a research alliance with the Cairo Institute. They stood at the edge of the main exhibition hall, their faces pale under the bright lights, their cheap suits looking out of place among the high society elite of Europe and Asia. This is our last chance, Ethan, Marcus said, his voice tight as he checked his watch. The CEO of Aegis said if we don't get the meeting with the chief scientist of the Cairo Institute today, the company will file for bankruptcy on Monday. I know, Ethan whispered, his eyes scanning the crowd. But the chief scientist, they're saying she's incredibly busy. She doesn't see anyone without a prior appointment. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice carried through the massive hall, drawing the immediate attention of the crowd. We will now begin the keynote presentation of the summit, the Aegis Override Alloy, by the lead associate of the Cairo Institute. The lights in the main hall dimmed, leaving only a single, brilliant spotlight focused on the center of the stage. A figure stepped onto the stage. She was wearing a simple, dark blue silk business suit that clung to her lean, elegant frame. Her dark hair was styled back, revealing a face that was radiant, beautiful, and filled with a cold, absolute confidence. Around her neck, the blue sapphire cross, now perfectly reconstructed and mounted in a sleek, titanium frame, glittered under the spotlight. It was Natalie. Ethan's glass of water slipped from his fingers, shattering against the floor. Natalie. Beside him, Chloe's face went paper white. She took a step back, her hands trembling so violently she had to hold onto the edge of a display table to keep from falling. She's the lead associate? Chloe whispered, her voice cracking. Natalie didn't look at them. She stood in the middle of the stage, her voice clear, confident, and fluent in both Arabic and English as she explained the molecular structure of the new alloy. Her slides were flawless, her math so advanced that the senior scientists in the front row were nodding in deep, silent respect. She wasn't the quiet girl who stood in the corner of the graduation hall anymore. She was the star of the summit. When she finished her presentation, the entire hall stood up, their applause echoing off the high ceilings like thunder. Ethan didn't wait. He pushed past the security guards, his eyes wild with a mixture of hope and desperate, clawing panic as he ran toward the stage. Natalie, he screamed, his voice shaking the quiet air of the hall. Natalie. It's me, Ethan. The VIP reception room of the Cairo Institute was a quiet sanctuary of white lilies, cold water, and high society elite. I stood by the marble bar, a glass of iced tea in my hand, my mentor, Dr. Vance, standing beside me. We were surrounded by several senior materials directors from the European Space Agency, all eager to ask about the production costs of the new alloy. The cost is 40% lower than the standard titanium carbon mix, Dr. Ross. I was explaining, my voice calm and professional. The key is the dynamic crystallization process. Natalie. The crowd parted. Ethan rushed into the room, his clothes rumpled, his hair wet with sweat, his face pale and thin. He was stopped 5 feet away by 3 tall men in dark suits, the Cairo Institute's security guards. Natalie, please, Ethan cried, his voice raw with a deep, agonizing pain. Look at me. I'm sorry. I know everything now. Chloe lied. I know she took your room and your necklace. He fell to his knees on the polished marble floor, his hands reaching toward me. But the guards immediately blocked him, their expressions cold. I bought the suitcase, Natalie. He sobbed, his tears wetting the stone floor. The fancy one from the mall. I've had it in my car for 2 years. Please, just come home. My company, my life. Everything is yours. I'll marry you. Tomorrow. I looked down at him. The man I had dated for 4 years. The man who had told me I was independent enough to take an Uber to the ER while I was collapsing from gastritis was kneeling at my feet, weeping like a broken child. But my heart was completely quiet. No satisfaction, no anger, and no joy. Get up, Mr. Vance, I said quietly. He slowly raised his head, his face wet with tears, his eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic hope. Natalie, will you come back? Your dad, he's sick. His blood pressure, he's been in the hospital. I don't have a father, Mr. Vance, I said, my voice level and calm. My dad died when he told me my hard-earned money was for me to throw away on a $100 suitcase. And my mother, she died when she allowed another girl to smash my grandmother's necklace. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, blue velvet box. My legal team in New York has just completed the probate of Grandma Eleanor's private estate, I said, sliding the document across the table. She left the family mansion and 80% of the Sinclair family trust to me. The court has already signed the eviction papers. Your parents have 48 hours to pack their bags and vacate my house. Natalie, no. Ethan whispered, his face turning paper white. They're your parents. You can't do this to them. They have Chloe to take care of them, Ethan, I said, a faint, cold smile touching my lips. She's their real daughter after all. She has the $6,000 suit, the $15,000 bag, and the Aegis job. Oh wait, she was fired for plagiarism, wasn't she? I turned my back on him, walking toward the balcony that looked out over the quiet, golden dunes of the desert, my voice dropping into a quiet, final whisper. The flight is in September, Ethan. But this time, I'm the one who didn't write your name on the cake. The balcony of my apartment in Cairo was warm and peaceful in the early evening. The sun was beginning to set over the pyramids, casting a long, red-gold light across the ancient desert. The air was dry and clean, smelling of sand and wild jasmine. I stood by the railing, a cup of mint tea in my hand, my left hand resting over my pocket. Inside was the sapphire cross, now perfectly whole, its blue pieces held together by a strong, elegant titanium frame I had designed myself in the laboratory. My phone vibrated on the table. It was a notification from the New York Real Estate Board. The transfer of the Sinclair mansion has been finalized. The property is now listed under the ownership of Natalie Sinclair. The former residents have moved into a small, rented apartment in the western suburbs. I looked at the message, then closed my phone and set it down. I didn't feel any anger. I didn't feel any pain. The girl who had walked miles in ill-fitting shoes was gone. The sister who had slept in the storage closet was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built her own career, won her own name, and finally found her own home, 5,000 miles away under the deep space stars. I took a slow sip of my tea, a quiet, deep peace settling over my soul as the desert wind blew through my hair, carrying the dry sand of the Nile toward a bright, clean, and beautifully open future.